Let's talk.
Giles Brown.
And the songbirds keep singing like they know the score. And I love you, I love you, I love you like never before. Like never before. Like never before.
Indeed, from the album Fleetwood Mac, from the album Rumours, Excuse Me, Songbird, which is written by Christine McVie. And Christine McVie is the subject of a new intimate biography from Sunday Times bestselling author Lesley-Ann Jones. Delighted to say that Lesley joins us live on the line once again. Lesley, good morning to you. Good to have you back with us.
Oh, good morning. Thanks for having me.
Pleasure's all mine. When people think Fleetwood Mac, they think Mick Fleetwood, they think Lindsey Buckingham, and of course they think Stevie Nicks. But Christine really is sort of the beating heart, if you like, of Fleetwood Mac.
She certainly is. I was going to say was, but is, because the music remains. And, you know, also the mother of the band, she was the glue that held them all together, because we know what a chaotic setup they were. And somebody had to keep it going. And she was the mother who they all turned to. Not that she was a goody two-shoes, as she said herself, you know. She misbehaved just as much as all the rest of them. But there was something maternal about Christine that as long as she was there at the back of the stage, behind the keyboard, just keeping the thing on the road, everything was all right. And it was never the same after she left for 16 years.
You say that she's the quintessentially English rock star. How do you think you are quintessentially English rock star?
You know, there was a spell during the 70s and early 80s when the emphasis was on all things American. And yes, they did move to California. They recorded their best work there. But Christine remained English. She was an English rose. She kept her accent. She kept her sense of humor, most importantly. And when I got to know her, one of the things we gelled over was the fact that we had that same dark, curious sense of humor, and we could laugh not only at everything around us, but also at ourselves.
What's the background? Because we sort of think that she sort of springs fully formed into Fleetwood Mac with, you know, the first sort of unknown album, and then of course the massive hit that is Rumours. But what's her back? 'Cause her name is very rockstar even before she changes it.
Yeah, although, well, she was actually born Anne Christine Perfect, but she was Christine and Anne Perfect. When she went to school, teachers would say to her, you know, Christine and Perfect, I hope you can live up to your name. And she said she went through her childhood desperate to shed that name. So when she married at 25 to John McVie, the bassist in Fleetwood Mac, the first thing she did was get rid of her name, and she never reversed it after they divorced.
How does she fall into the sort of the rock and roll scene? Is she part of that English blues explosion? Because I'm kind of thinking, and correct me if I'm wrong, that it's a predominantly sort of male sort of atmosphere around that sort of late 60s when Fleetwood Mac first gets going with Peter Green. It is part of that John May, Alexis Corner, Eel Pie Island sort of situation.
Very much, yes. That short-lived blues revival in Britain, ironically, where they were ignoring it in the States at the time, and it was from there. But she discovered Fats Domino when she was about 15 from some piano music left in the piano stool by her brother. And the blues spoke to her. She had that misery inside her, that teenage angst that she couldn't get away from. And she kind of sabotaged her academic career to go to art school, which is a crucible. You know, all art schools, we know so many rock stars started out in bands when they were students at art school, and she did too. She was in an outfit called the Bobcats and then moved to Chicken Shack. She got together with Stan Webb. They had one hit, and it was her singing it. It was the Etta James classic, I'd Rather Go Blind. And they were signed to the same label, Blue Horizon, Mike Vernon's label. They ended up doing the Windsor Blues Festival together in 1967. And at that point, Christine very much had the hots for Peter Green. as you say, Peter Green's Fleetwood Mac, the first lineup, but it was John McVie she ended up marrying.
So how does she make this transition into Fleetwood Mac itself? Because obviously Peter Green leaves Fleetwood Mac, and then they have to sort of they reinvent themselves, don't they? Basically, and that's before they go to sort of Studio City and meet Mick hears the sounds of Lindsey Buckingham and his then girlfriend Stevie Nicks.
Yeah, the lineup changed several times. Peter Green had psychological issues, and he ended up leaving, so they brought different musicians into the band. Christine said once she got married, all she wanted to do was be a housewife and mother. And they got a commune down in Hampshire, so all the band moved in together with their partners. And she's there cooking and cleaning and painting the walls, and now and again they'd be working on their new album. They had a studio there in the house, and they would need a bit of piano contributed, or they'd need some backing vocals. And gradually, bit, by stealth and almost behind her back, she got drawn into the lineup. And then they had a US tour coming up. They didn't have a keyboard player, so they took her with them, and she was then part of the band.
Oh, and in the best traditions of phone lines, we seem to have lost.
I'm here.
Ah, you're there.
I'm absolutely
so
here.
In the best traditions of we're getting drawn into the band there, and then you went quiet. So she's being drawn into the band ahead of the US tour.
Yeah, they have a US tour. They go to California, and then Mick, in the early mid-70s, meets Lindsey Buckingham because Bob Weston left the band. They need a guitarist, and Lindsey Buckingham said brilliantly, "I'll only join if my girlfriend can come too." So here we are, Lindsey Buckingham, Stevie Nicks, and Christine had the deciding vote. 2 women in a rock band. Who ever heard of such a thing, you know?
Yeah, I mean, the potential for the biggest catfight or whatever that could have come out of that, because there are, the stories of women in rock and roll not getting on together. It can be even worse than women, because it's, in rock bands normally there are massive egos, and it shows something of Christine's temperament, that she not only welcomes in Stevie, but they become the firmest of friends.
Yes, she was relieved. She didn't want to be a front woman. She wasn't somebody at the front of the stage twirling about in chiffon. She said no more than Stevie was somebody who could hang around at the back playing piano. So they were the perfect chemistry, and they did become best friends almost against the guys. But Christine was very much one of the boys as well. So this is what we call the classic Rumours lineup. And then they forged ahead, and they had that first album together, 75, Fleetwood Mac, which they called their White Album, like the Beatles, because that was called the Beatles. It was tongue-in-cheek. And then Rumours in 1977, which really still is one of the biggest selling rock albums in history, and which, to a large extent at the time, did change the world.
I mean, it's an album, isn't it? That is everybody's playing Rumours, but not only that, but at the same time, while they're going on tour and having 2 women on tour is great because it's not a male-only atmosphere, but at the same time, their whole social dynamic, shall we say, it's the 70s. They're all having fun. There are various things stronger than sherbet whizzing around, and Rumours is an album about breakups and relationships falling apart, and as is the entire band.
Although, it's funny, it wasn't at the time. It wasn't designed. It wasn't a concept album. It just so happened that their inter-band relationships were breaking down while they were recording it. So the 3 of them who were writing songs, Christine, Stevie, and Lindsey, were bringing in songs that reflected what was going on in their personal life. So bit by bit, it evolved into what we call the divorce album.
So how does they have this massive hit in 76, 77, and what's going on in the personal life? Because again, it must be incredibly difficult to sort of be in a band whilst your relationship is breaking down. You've still got to go out every night. I mean, everybody knows about the Stevie Nicks and Lindsey Buckingham situation, but what's happening with Christine and John at this point then?
So Christine and John are divorcing. She's having an affair with a guy called Curry Grant, who's their lighting director. They did sack him for that, but they didn't let him go for very long because he was so good at his job, and somebody had to make them look good. Mick had divorced his wife, Jenny Boyd, the sister of Pattie Boyd, George Harrison's former wife, and then 4 months later got married to her again, but in the meantime starts an affair with Stevie Nicks, which is ongoing while he's back with his former wife, now wife again. You see what's going on here. And Lindsay and John were playing the field, you know, so it is a bit of a mess.
And so what is the, because she leaves, I mean, I always think that, you know, Christine McVie is literally sort of welded at the hip to Fleetwood Mac, but she you know, she tries to bring them back into the, but she herself, doesn't she? She leaves the band at some point.
She left in 1990. So did Stevie, by the way. Stevie was having a massive solo career, bigger than any of the others had a solo career. Christine tried it, but she wasn't that interested. She's a team player, but she was sick and tired. She was also aviophobic. She had a terrible fear of flying, which is an affliction that gets lots of rock stars. She wasn't alone in that. And she bought a big house in Kent, back in England, which took her 8 years to do up. And she said, I'm done. She flogged her Californian house, got rid of the Rolls Royce, didn't renew her green card, and for 16 years she was gone. But she became very lonely during those years, and she hit the bottle again. She started taking codeine for back pain, but became addicted to it. And in the end, she said, I realized I didn't belong anywhere except among my people, other bonkers people who speak my language, who are eccentric, who don't find me strange. And by that, she meant other musicians.
Other bonkers people, yeah, but she's a friend of yours. So how did she? You know, not saying that you're a completely bonkers person, Lesley-Ann, but how did you first meet her?
I was working for a British newspaper in California. And we met at a New Year's Eve party. And her former fiancé was Dennis Wilson, the drummer in the Beach Boys. And bizarrely, I'd had dinner with him 3 weeks before, and then he drowned. His drowning was nothing to do with me. And stand by, hang on. Sorry, quick cough.
That's all right.
And we just got into a conversation about Dennis.
And I mean, obviously, approachably tall. I mean, she no airs and graces. She wasn't rock star behaviour, was she?
No, she did have fair share of cocaine. I mean, everybody thought Dennis Wilson corrupted her, but in fact, she introduced him to the drug. He was more of a boozer, but, you know, I think people didn't mix those things in those days. You were either a boozer or a drug taker. This was all a bit over my head because I was younger than these people by quite some years, and so... yeah, I suppose I was in awe of them and a bit terrified, but Brits abroad in those days did club together.
And so, you know, she gets, I mean, they have Tusk, which is an interesting album. I don't think the world was quite ready for that when they were already sort of expecting something a little more rumours like. And then there's Steve, who's got her own career going on, Age of 17, etc. Then there's Tango in the Night, which puts them firmly back in the 80s.
Yeah, and they sort of coasted, didn't they? They never, again, achieved the great heights of Rumours, I don't think. But rock bands from the 70s do get to that stage where they rest on their laurels to some extent. And lots of young people today, certainly all my three kids who are 20-somethings, love Rumours and play it constantly and have it on their shuffle and so on, you know. And that is the album that resonates. I think people are pretty much unaware of the rest, as they are of the vast body of work that Christine composed. I mean, she contributed the most tracks on Rumours, and on all the other albums, there's extensive work, which I think is largely ignored. I have listed in my book, I think about 27 songs that I consider to be her finest, and most of them are songs that most people will never have heard.
What was? Do you know what her process was for songwriting? Did she sort of just go away on the piano because and then come back with sort of fully formed songs to say to the band, you know, work with this, or just sort of, you know, put the edge on this one sort of situation?
She told me she was a pretty basic love songwriter, and that mostly she would have an idea, she'd sit down at the piano, it would usually start with the chords, and then the lyrics would drift in, and she would go into the studio and start to play something, and because she was so reliable, you know, they would go with it. The one song that she couldn't explain, which came out of nowhere into her head one night, was Songbird. And her mother, Beatrice, had been a psychic, a faith healer, and a medium. And so Chris had a very strange childhood because she was sharing her mother with all these dead people, all these ghosts. Her mum used to take people on ghost walks, and she had a spirit guide and all of this. So your mum is a bit detached. You know, you're always lacking something if you are in that position. And she said to me, I always wanted an ordinary mother. Well, her mother appeared appears to have come back to her, according to the way Christine understood it, and delivered this song into her head one night. She didn't have a keyboard, a little recording device. She didn't have anything with her. She had to sit up all night with this song in her head going over and over and over it until she could get to a studio the next morning just to lay it down. And she was fully formed. I never understood where it came from. But when we talked about it, it seemed that the Songbird might have been the Lark Ascending, you know, the Ralph Vaughan Williams piece for violin, which she would have heard her father play hundreds of times because he was a music teacher and also a sort of failed concert first violinist in a symphony orchestra. But that was one of the pieces he loved to play. And when she did her Desert Island Discs, she chose that as her favorite piece of music. So that little lark, I believe, and she certainly felt, was the inspiration, and that it kind of came via her mother. Who knows?
She passed away a couple of years ago now. And I remember just the shock, because I was unaware that were there any health issues. I mean, just looking at the tributes and Stevie Nicks particularly, because I follow her on the socials, and she seems to have been hugely affected by the passing. My goddaughter went to see Stevie Nicks at the show during British Summertime this year, and there's a tribute to her in that as well. And so obviously, you know, she's had a huge and profound effect on Stevie Nicks, and Stevie misses her still.
Yeah, I think it sort of became exposed that they weren't that close at the end of Chris's life, because Stevie did openly say, I didn't even know she was ill. You know, didn't really know anything was wrong. They had all drifted away from each other, and we're all getting on with their own stuff, and Chris was dealing very privately with her health issues. And she went in a very dignified way. She didn't make a fuss about it. That was very Christine.
So what are you hoping, and who do you speak to about a book like this? Because when you come to a book like this, it's somebody you know, it's somebody who's revered in the rock world. You kind of have to, is there a thin line to tread when you do this between sort of sensationalism and giving them the respect and perhaps the perspective that they deserve?
Yeah, there is. And my quest is always for the truth. I don't seek sensationalism at all. Sometimes there are sensitive issues that you have to treat very carefully. You can't shy away from certain aspects of somebody's life. And Christine certainly wouldn't have expected me to. We did talk about writing her memoir together. I would have ghosted it for her. We had that conversation a couple of times. But then she changed her mind. And then again, towards the end of her life, she was talking in interviews about perhaps doing that again. So I think, you know, I like to think she would be pleased with the balance of this book. I do always go to all the sources I can reach for the answers. It was, in fact, only when I was asked to write a piece for a newspaper about her after she died that I realized how little I knew about her early life. And so then I went looking for a biography of hers to read up and find out, and there wasn't one. So this is, in fact, the very first Christine McVie biography ever to be published.
Amazing. So what are you hoping that people are going to take from the book?
I hope they'll understand her and see her significance in the band, that she wasn't just the keyboard player in the back line, but she was the major songwriting contributor, and that without her, the classic Fleetwood Mac lineup probably would have disintegrated.
The book is called Songbird, an intimate biography of Christine McVie. It is by Lesley-Ann Jones, who is speaking today, and you can order it via the TRE virtual bookstore. Lesley-Ann, if people want to find you online, can they find you? Are you relatively easy to track down online?
Oh, yes, I am. Lesley-AnnJones.com.
Marvellous. The book is called Songbird, an intimate of Christine McVie. It's by Lesley-Ann Jones. You can order it via our own virtual bookstore. Once again, it's been lovely to speak to you. So get writing so we can get another book out. So what's your next project?
Stand by.
Oh.
I'm so sorry, you've caught me on a bad day with a bit of a cold.
It's okay.
I'm working on a book at the moment which I've signed an NDA, so I can't tell you, but I will next year.
Right, okay, well, we'll get you straight back on that one. Lesley, you're always one of my favourite guests to have on Talk Radio. This book is called Songbird, an intimate biography of Christine McVie. It's by the lovely Lesley-Ann Jones. Lesley-Ann, thank you so much for your time again.
Thank you very much. See you soon.